What is going on, Lucid fans? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So it is that time of season. Q2 earnings is right around the corner. I'm going to give you my expectations, things that you really need to watch for coming from an investor standpoint, and give you a good breakdown of everything. Before I get into any of that, making sure you guys hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I greatly appreciate that. With that, let's get right to it. So just as a formality, just wanted to technically say that right now Lucid has not announced their earnings. Up until they do, it is just all speculation. Some brokers say August the 4th, some say August the 5th, some say completely random dates. Until Lucid actually announces it, that's when we'll know. And generally speaking, they like to give roughly about 2 weeks notice as far as an investor kind of courtesy, but generally speaking, they only have to give roughly about 48 hours. So just keep those in mind. But when it comes down to earnings, I'm going to make this very beginner friendly, explain a lot of different things. So if this is your first earnings, there are several different things that investors generally watch for, one of which is earnings per share, revenue, future guidance, and depending on the sector, so in Lucid's case, we are going to really be caring about the reservation numbers, delivery numbers, and production. So just take that how you see that. But when it comes down to it, you can see right here on the Q1 earnings, earnings per share. So there was the expected negative 29 cents, reported negative 37 cents, attributed most likely to higher costs, but that was a little bit more of a negative surprise. As far as earnings per share for Q2, the expectation is negative 44 cents, most likely as again because higher costs, but that is still something that you need to watch for, insinuating that Q2 earnings per share is going to be a little bit more worse off than Q1. So it might be a little bit more of a negative sentiment in that regard. As far as revenue though, you can see that is a little bit more on the positive end. But one thing I just wanted to kind of explain for this upcoming earnings Q2 for their revenue, there might be a little bit more of a positive surprise because after Q1 or post Q1 earnings, there was a deadline for individuals who had reservations to convert it to an actual order to avoid the 10 to 12% price increase on the vehicles. So when it comes down to it though, that is going to mean most likely there's going to be a lot more orders, a lot more revenue for Lucid. So that might be a little bit more of a positive, unexpected surprise. But no matter what though, my own 2 cents, I'm not a financial advisor, so do your own due diligence. My own take on Lucid and their earnings, I think earnings per share and revenue is not as important to investors as future guidance or actual just getting production and deliveries down. My own 2 cents. Obviously, once Lucid does get a little bit more established, I think there will be a little bit more of an importance on earnings per share and revenue, especially earnings per share. We want to be able to see that they can produce the vehicles at the lowest cost available to them. And obviously, Lucid does a lot of things in-house, so they have the capability of having amazing earnings per share in the future. They just need to ramp things up a little bit. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below about earnings per share and revenue not being as important in Lucid's case. But still, when it comes down to it though, reservation numbers. So right now there is roughly about 30,000 give or take. That's not obviously attributing to that big order from the Saudi Arabia government, but still, most likely Lucid's not going to really factor that in. My own 2 cents. Obviously Lucid can do what they want, but especially since they haven't really kind of announced it. But generally speaking, the reservation numbers should go up because within the Q2, they obviously had studios out in Europe, so that's a very positive thing. They've been opening a lot more studios throughout North America as well, which ultimately has been always doing very good, always increasing demand, getting a lot more reservations. So that definitely is going to be helping Lucid. And not only that though, with Bank of America and being able to lease vehicles now, I did do a video on that, and ultimately it does show that it appeals to roughly about 27% extra as far as individuals, because not everyone wants to buy a vehicle. Some people just want to have it for several different years or 2, 5 years, whatever it is, and then just hand it back and walk away. Generally speaking, that is going to appeal roughly to around 27% additional individuals, meaning hopefully there might factor into more reservations. But I think the biggest thing for reservations for Q2 is going to be for Europe. So that's how I see things at least. But outside of reservation numbers, people are really going to be watching production and delivery numbers. So you can even see in Q1, there was 360 vehicles. So that isn't good, and if you ask me, but it's still obviously they're ramping up. Things are going to be improving, but I think the market is very relentless, especially with interest rates increasing. We don't really generally have a lot of time for companies just to figure themselves out. We want them to kind of hit the floor running and basically just produce what is expected. So right now it's not in line. So I think that's going to be one very touchy thing. And no matter what comes from the earnings per share or revenue, I think if the delivery numbers is not there, then most likely the overall sentiment for the earnings is going to be very much negative. That's how I see things generally, and especially that's what a lot of investors have really cared about in previous earnings. So right now the forecast for the end of the year is between 12 to 14,000. I did do a video on this. I think it is estimates because right now there's rumors floating around saying that there was 2,600 vehicles actual delivered in Q2. So again, based on Lucid, as far as rumors in the past, generally speaking, they are for the most part pretty accurate. So if you do want to take that 2,600 to actual heart, then most likely things that will be fairly positive. I think that's going to be in line with a lot of people, if not a little bit low, because I think people are expecting at least 3,000 for this upcoming earnings. But still, again, depending on what happens, as long as it's not 300 or something like that, definitely I think it should be seen in a positive light. But based on the Q1 earnings, they did say in just April alone, they did produce 400 vehicles, deliver 300. So just in April, they basically did what they did overall in Q1. So I think we are on a good trend, and hopefully long-term investors see it as that they're increasing their trend, not going down. But there was this post that was posted on Twitter. So it's basically Lucid vehicles being delivered and estimated and rumored, obviously, to have the number vehicle 2257, so 2,257. Again, if that does hold out to be true, then most likely our delivery number is going to be give or take around 1,700, most likely for Q1, because 2,200, give or take, subtract 360, subtract also the Q4, which I believe it was 125, give or take around 1,700 to 1,800. If that does hold out to be very much true, then I do anticipate us to go down. My own 2 cents. Like I said, I could be completely wrong about this. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. But I did do a poll just to kind of get people's perspective on this. So do you think Lucid is going to hit their 2022 production goals? 30% of people said yes, 55% said no, but it's going to be very much close to that 12 to 14,000. So again, let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. But generally speaking, if this is true, that 2,257, most likely 1,700 is not going to be good. At the end, based on my calculations and my video, I put us at roughly about 88 vehicles per day. That's given the 2,600. So if we are only at 17, then most likely that'll jump us up to around 90 vehicles per day needed for Q4. That's very high expectations. So Lucid at the end needs to really ramp it up. So like I said, I talked on a lot of different things. And finally, the most interesting fact of them all that is basically a wild card is their future guidance. There's a lot of different things that could be said from there, a lot of positives, negatives. This is the transcript from Q1, and ultimately they talk on a lot of different things. So this is where Peter or Sherry can talk on basically shutdown. So in Q1, they did refer to COVID lockdowns for China, possibly impacting others kind of sectors and ultimately supply chain, and that may affect future things. And we all know, based on what Tesla recently cited, that because of the China lockdowns, they were kind of getting a little bit more supply chain issues. So that might translate to Lucid as well. So take that how you see that. That might be something for us to keep in mind. But in here, in the Q1 earnings, they do talk on a lot of different things. They basically, the only negative was this. They obviously talked on then raising prices because of commodities and whatnot. Most likely they are going to reiterate that this upcoming earnings as well. They should hopefully touch on the Pure because they did get pushed back a little bit. Same with the performance, the Grand Touring performance. Those did get pushed back to the Q4. So hopefully they do talk on that, and more so developments going on in Europe as well, because that's been basically dormant since give or take around April. They've kind of really ramped up things. They talked about it quite a lot, saying that the Germany studios, sorry, not April, I believe it's May, but still, you get what I'm saying. And then over and above all of that fun stuff, most likely they will touch on as far as how they're trying to mitigate some risk to, because recession, everyone's talking about recessions, and it is still a real possibility. I don't feel one is going to come, but still, based on every analyst and based on every institution that's talking, they still feel that a recession may come, whether it be tail end of 2022, early 2023. There's a lot of mixed feelings on that. So Lucid may or may not touch on that, and like I said, how they're trying to avoid any risk or unnecessary risk. But overall, overall, there's a lot of different things that they can talk on, because especially I do daily videos on Lucid, and there's different topics to talk on every single video, whether it just be the expansion they could talk on, their actual vehicles, the pushback, the pros, the cons. Obviously there was a recall as well that they may talk about as well, depending on kind of what is said. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways that earnings can go from all of these different factors. Like I said, even if they give amazing positive reviews for the future, if their delivery numbers aren't there, then you know what, the market and investors are not really going to appreciate that. Vice versa, if they deliver 10,000 vehicles in Q2, which would be absolutely amazing, if their future guidance, if they're seeing things, a lot of trouble in the future, or just not being able to have some issue, whatever it might be, you kind of get what I'm saying. A lot of different things could always happen, especially even earnings per share, revenue, earnings is a little bit more of a beast among itself. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that thumbs up, subscribe, to all that fun stuff. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on a couple different factors. Let me know your thoughts on as far as how many vehicles you assume is going to be delivered, because keeping in line with this, do you feel that it's going to be roughly about 1,700 in Q2? Again, if this number is actual correct, that's most likely a fairly accurate assumption, is around the 1,700 mark. So let me know your thoughts on that, and overall the sentiment for the upcoming earnings. Is it going to be negative, positive? Where do you feel we're going to kind of land? If you do like my channel, don't forget to become a member. Link in the description below, or just hit the join button at the bottom of the screen. With that, I appreciate you guys watching, and let's all make a lot of money on Lucid.